What's good, folks, family, friends, loved ones, enemies, frenemies, wizards, witches, muggles, mudbloods, people of Middle Earth do a training camp eve edition of Disguise coverage, the only podcast that gives you an equal amount of blueberries in each muffin and is presented by the best pizza in Buffalo, New York, and that is One Pie Pizza. Find the online menu in the episode show notes, whether here on YouTube and or whichever podcasting app or platform you are listening to this show on. I'm your host, Anthony Prohaska. Find me on Twitter at pro__ant. That's pro2_ANT. In tonight's episode of Disguise coverage, it is the eve of Buffalo Bills 2024 training camp. And so we will be diving into what and who to watch for in Buffalo Bills training camp, schematic pieces, position groupings, players, coaching pieces, anything and everything is open for discussion on tonight's episode as we break down the most important things, the top storylines. We're going to be ranking some things, a whole bunch of that in regards to this conversation. And I say we because I'm not by myself in this episode. I am joined by the host of Locked On Bills and the host of Locked On NFL Scouting, and one of the favorite people, I think, of Bills fans across any type of location, fandom, whatever you're looking for, Mr. Joe Marino. You're welcomed in this space by myself, by the brand, by the people listening. You're a very busy man. I love your work. I appreciate you taking the time. Welcome to the show.
AP, it's good to be on with you, brother. And if I may ask you a question,
Sure.
I feel like I don't think I've seen that helmet behind you before with the blue face mask. And what's your take on the blue face mask? Like,
I love it.
Be incorporating this?
I wish it was their helmet all the time. Yeah.
Wow.
I used to have it. Oh, yeah. And I'm thinking the last time when I joined you, when the last episode that I joined you for Locked On, I think I had it either down here more or up and hidden. I didn't have it kind of front and center like I do now, but it's my favorite helmet, like Bill's helmet of all time. And I like where they're at with the white and the clean white face mask. I really wish they brought that blue face mask back. Oh man, I got an in the comment. That hurts.
We need to give it like the Dallas Cowboys Thanksgiving special moment. Like, just find out, right? We found out on that Thanksgiving game that the white face masks were better than the gray face masks.
Yes.
Now let's just sample it. We'll sample it and go from there. But I need to see it. I feel like I want to see it with the modern stitching.
And see, I like that. Just test the waters a little bit. If it doesn't work out, no big deal. You wore it for one game and it's fine. I've always liked it. Especially like the journey of Bills uniforms, like growing up in the 90s and seeing what they were wearing in the 90s. But then I remember seeing a random clip from like the Joe Ferguson days and then seeing the evolution of the uniforms and even the early Kelly years with the red helmet and the blue face mask. And I was always just, yeah, if you could give me a blue face mask and then something else I've always been enamored with, I've always wanted the Bills to incorporate into their uniform scheme red pants with the white jersey. I remember being little and looking at like the Pro Bowl NFL cards of Steve Atwater and Steve Tasker from like the 94 Pro Bowl or 93 or whatever, where they're wearing the white uniforms with the red numbers and it says like All-American or All-Pro across or Pro Bowl. And then they got the red pants. I would love a white jersey with some red pants. Like that's you could throw some 90s throwbacks in there as well, but a red pant with a white jersey and then a blue face mask. Not all together, but I would love to see that incorporated, especially for a team like they have so many cool alternate or throwback options and teams now left and right are just throwing out all this cool stuff and we're not doing anything.
Yeah. When's it going to be our turn? Interesting idea. I'm a big uniform guy, so I love this conversation.
Cool.
Can we agree that if we do red pants, the blue jersey is not an option for that?
Absolutely not. No, it's a white jersey only with the red pants.
Then do you run into like criticism that you're just copying 90s Patriots with their red pants and their white jersey with the white helmet?
Fair question. I think if you do it right, no. If anything, I would be too afraid of people being like, aren't these just the Pro Bowl uniforms from like 1993?
Right. Well, it's not our fault that the Bills populated the Pro Bowl in 1993. So
we had so many guys. Or I could even see Titan came in and said like Chiefs because of red pants with the white jersey. But the colors, the pops of blue and the different shades are going to make it different. Like you still see those pops of yellow with the Chiefs. We wouldn't have that with the Bills. Right. I didn't know you were this much of a jersey.
Oh, guy. Dude, like the aesthetics of football. Yeah, I'm really into it. Like even just different color, like uniform combinations on the field and how they look against
Yes.
each other. Like it's all important to me. The field design.
Yeah.
I'm no green end zones.
Oh,
Yeah,
same.
yeah. So I mean, like, there's so much that I care about with the aesthetics of football. So
Same. I've always been a huge like painted end zone type of dude. Like I love the Bills end zone from the 90s. I loved when the
was
Steelers
red.
would make their end zone all yellow and the Ravens do the black and the
Yeah,
purple. Like, yeah, the 49ers with the old school font now and the end zone's red. Yeah, I'm big into, or you get a good 49ers Cowboys game, that jersey aesthetic and how it looks and meshes. Even I got college football 25. Like picking my dynasty, a
it's
big
about
thing
the
for
yeah.
me, it was jersey. Like, what are my jersey options? How good do they look? Like, it was a huge factor in terms of what I did.
Well, why do you think the drought lasted as long as it did? I mean, it's punishment for having
God,
the green end zones, no colored end zones.
so ugly. I hated those just as much as you remember. That was around the time too. Remember when the Steelers were just doing like the white diagonal
Yeah,
slashes
yeah,
in
get
their
out
end
of here.
zone?
Get all the way out of here.
I
Like, isn't
hated.
it a preseason game? We can't do that, right?
No, they were doing it, and Pitt was doing it because they obviously play in the same stadium. I was like, what is
Lame.
this like lack of care to the end zone? And then the
Right.
Bills were just like, we're just going to do this blue block lettering on the green background. I hated it, especially coming from the all red. It was horrendous.
Right. Right. You didn't even know when they scored because Bills is not like it wasn't even didn't even fill out the end zone.
No,
It's
it was like
straight up bad.
it was like they ran out of paint one time and were like, just screw it, make it as small as we can. We can't go bigger. We've run out. And someone was just like, we can just go buy more paint. And they were like, nope, not an option. Just make it size 11 font in the center of the end zone. Oh, and the jersey combinations were bad at that time too.
Yeah. Oh, dude. Yeah. All time bad. Last little thing here. I know this is not why you brought me here.
It could have been. Maybe I was angling for this. Maybe it was. Maybe I
Right.
kind of subliminally put it into this, and here we are.
I just, it's the comfort I have with you to just kind of get into crap. A take that I have on Fields,
Okay.
LSU. You got to miss me with putting the numbers on every single yard line.
Every five. Yeah, I don't. Like
Isn't it
that
just
shit.
too busy? It's hard to watch that.
I completely agree with you. The busyness of it, and especially too, like what annoys me with it is, I love how they have the eye of the tiger aspect at midfield, which I think is such a cool aesthetic. But yeah, it's drowned out by every 5 yards. It gives
Right.
me
How
a
much
headache.
cleaner would that look if we didn't have every single yard line marked with
Yeah,
numbers?
we don't need it. Like you mark every 10, we're good. Everybody knows. It's so funny that you mentioned that. I remember seeing that early on when I was little, and it threw me like for a
Right.
loop. I remember asking my dad, I was like, why is it every 5? He was like, they just do that. I was like, no one else like does that?
Right,
And he was like,
just
not really. I
them.
was like, yeah, what the
I
why?
appreciate the individuality, the uniqueness, but it's like it's not good. So let's not do it.
Yeah.
It's
No,
not good.
yeah.
It's not a
I'm
good
not
thing
a
to be
fan.
unique with.
No. Oh, I like this from Ralph in the comments. He said also the AFC logo in the end zone. I'm a big fan of that too. Give me a nice, like big, the red A logo in a corner. Man,
What do you? So I don't know if I'm fully on board with that. I
Okay.
think if you have a short name, it works to kind of fill it out.
like
But like,
Bills.
wouldn't I sort of like in the Super Bowl when it's like team logo and then the font with the team name?
I'm okay with that. I'm okay with either or. Again, like the one the Niners do it so good too because it's the old school early like Niners helmet with the old school font.
Super
and
good.
It's
Yeah.
so good. But yeah, if you
Yeah.
have a short enough name, I'm down for any combination. Give me a name and the helmet. Give me the name and the conference logo. Like something. I'm
Right.
a fan of just more of those elements that kind of take up and fill the space. So I'm a fan of either. I just dress it up however you want. Helmet or logo. Like, or maybe someone gets creative and does something else. But yeah, helmet or logo.
Well, and then secondary logos rarely are good. I think
Yes.
one of the only good secondary logos is like the Jaguars throwback that we're getting to see right now. Like,
so
that
good.
one works. I wish that there were more good secondary logos to like accent the field with.
Oh, I agree. And very well said on the Jags. Like I've been wanting them to go back to that color
So
scheme
good,
and
man.
logo design. And I went back and looked because I was like, I've always thought this way, and I didn't know if it was my childhood nostalgia of like Jimmy Smith and Keenan McCardell and Fred Taylor and James Stewart and Baselli and like Kevin Hardy and all these dudes. And then they released them, and I went back and looked again, and I was like, no, these jerseys were just they didn't need to be like monkeyed with. You didn't need to change anything. They were so good. And then they went like the black pants when they started to go away. I was like, okay, that's a fine incorporation. And then they just got too crazy and they just went off the rails. But I'm liking that they went back. They made a good decision.
It is humbling though, to be at the point in my life where a team that I saw enter the NFL, we're now going back to their original uniforms. Like, this is supposed to be situations where I turn on a football game, I see a team playing, I'm like, what the hell are those uniforms? Right. And they're like, oh, yeah, they wore those in 1965. Well, here I am, right? This is now me explaining, well, that was the original uniform when they became a team in 1996.
Back in my day when they first came in, that's how I feel.
Like, I had to watch a game with a 20-year-old and explain that to him, you know what I mean?
Brutal. I feel like that's a good one. That is right up there with like, so and so junior enters like college now. And I remember being in 1996, my dad telling me, oh yeah, like Peyton Manning, his dad played in the NFL, and Brian Greasy, his dad played in the NFL. I was like, oh, that's so cool. And now here I am, like, one of my cousins who's like 22 is like, oh, did you know, like Frank Gore, his dad played in the NFL? And I'm like, God, yeah, that makes, it just hits you.
Ooh, here we are, brother. That's why we're here tonight, talking about the Bills, right?
Right. Oh, one last one. Ralph had a good comment here too. The secondary logo, the old school Eagles one, the eagle with super the ball and its talons. Yeah. Good. Also, the Kelly Green, everything
about it. So why do you think the Bills lost that game? You weren't beating them with the Kelly Greens.
No, you can't beat that aesthetic.
You know what I mean? You never had a chance.
No. You know what's an underrated one too? And people might hate on me for it. I love the Dolphins, like mid 80s ones with the big logo on the helmet, the thick
not the
stripes.
Cartoon dolphin.
Just that circular logo, the thick stripes, how it all pairs together, that teal jersey, like everything is just, oh, it's such a good color scheme.
And that field aesthetic is super good too.
Yes. Yeah. Man, you know what? Now I know for like next off season, it's dead time. There's not a lot of stuff to dive into. Where I'm literally going to mark this. We're going to do like a football aesthetic episode.
Get rid of the scheme discussions that we typically like to do. Let's talk football jerseys and field aesthetics. I'm here for it, man.
We're going to go college. We're going to go NFL. This is a good one.
I have endless takes. So we're scratching the surface. We're 12 minutes into this thing. We are scratching the surface with what I have to
like say. That. Well done. This is good. Okay. So that leads us perfectly to, there we go. So Joe waved. When Joe waves on the episode tonight and then has to suddenly disappear, he's having some connectivity issues. He made me aware of it earlier when he joined, when we were offline. You guys know Joe does his show daily. He was having StreamYard issues earlier today, so he was great. As soon as he came in, he was like, if I disappear randomly, it's because of this. I'll give you the hand wave and let you know so you can communicate to the viewers. And lo and behold, he is back. Man, that would have been scary as hell if I had to know you just wave and you're gone. I'm like, oh my God.
You knew this was a possibility, but I took the opportunity to end our football Bills aesthetics conversation with this absolute gem that a listener of Locked On Bills sent me. Have a look at this. This has never been worn before.
Oh my goodness. Oh, wow.
So good, right? So good with like the blue collar on it and everything.
Yeah, the collar. I like the stitching.
Worn. Oh my
Unbelievable.
God. What a get, right?
I love the way the graphic like looks on the material. That's A-tier aesthetic.
I promise you it's better in person. Like, it is so good. So good.
That is A1 stuff. S-tier right there. And they know that's a perfect way. That's the high note. Anything else, there's nowhere to go from here but down. So we'll end it on that. Well done. Well done. Oh, Joe liked your he said that was the most polite way to announce Wi-Fi disruption I've ever seen. We communicated, but like kind of like communicating pre-snap. We communicated and
on the same page. You knew the signal. You know what I mean? We figured it out.
That's it. We saw the motion come. We knew. We called it out. We switched coverage. Boom. There we go. All right. Let's transition to the topic for this evening, which, man, that was a really good discussion. I'm literally excited for like off-season 2025 to now do this episode with you.
Is it June 2025 yet? We got to talk about the Volunteers and the checkered end zones. We got so much to get into.
God, it's taking everything I have to not continue down this path.
Wyoming and Western Michigan.
Oh my God. Don't stop.
Training camp, it starts tomorrow or practice.
Who cares now? We're scrapping all of it. So training camp, I guess, starts tomorrow. Tonight is training camp eve. It's kind of important, maybe a little bit. What I think was nice about this one, just kind of like a high-level question for you as we dive into it. How excited are you for this camp, or eager, or like anxiously anticipating, could positive, negatively, whatever, like considering, you and I have talked about it a bunch in the DMs and on your show and on here throughout the offseason. Just the multitude of changes for this team from a coaching staff standpoint and from an on the field standpoint. I feel like this training camp has a lot to look for and a lot to consider in terms of like what you're focusing on, just because of all the changes versus teams past and kind of trying to see how everything fits. Like, are you feeling that a little bit going towards this camp?
Yeah, I think the newness and the unknowns make it super exciting. And I think I've had conversations with you at some point, even during the season last year, where I started to say, I think there's parts of this roster that are expired. They have to transition. Yes. Like they need to do what they did. And then they did it. And so you have to go through the emotions of what that's like. But it was a very necessary medicine to take. And so I like the idea that there's this ushering in of the next era of the Josh Allen chapter of Buffalo Bills football. And it has a different look and feel. And there's similar but new coaching on both sides of the football, and really a different looking supporting cast offensively in so many ways, so many new pieces on defense. And for as exciting as the last 5 years of Bills football have been, I think we know how it ends, right? It's where a lot of people would want to be, but not ultimately where we want to go. And so I'm excited and interested in seeing what this new nucleus can accomplish. So many young players that, whether they're rookies that are interesting, but also this wave of Terrell Bernard and Khalil Shakir and James Cook and Osiris Torrance and Dalton Kincaid and Christian Benford. And like, I want to see it all, right? I want to see all this come together and get an idea for what the upside of this new group is. And so it's exciting and nervous. It's nerve-wracking, all of it all at once, but I'm definitely more interested and excited than I've been in a long time.
That's so well said. And I echo a lot of those similar sentiments in a lot of similar ways. So I'm going tomorrow and I'm going Thursday, and I was doing obviously the prep for this episode. And then just even my prep for tomorrow, like I like to organize things kind of similar to like when I go to the Senior Bowl, like who I'm watching for each practice, on what side of the ball, like where are my eyes going? And there were just so many things that I'm kind of like eagerly anticipating in a positive way, some with some trepidation, but a lot of it just being like, I'm excited to see how this side of the ball does this, how this player fits in here, what this position group does here. And then that kind of funneled into the episode. And even, you messaged me at the end of last week saying, getting it down to, so what Joe and I are going to be doing is we're going to be ranking our top 3 things to watch for at training camp. Could be a person, could be something schematic, could be a position group, could be anything. We cast a wide net to make this conversation as, wide reaching as possible. And you, from the DMs, quote, getting it down to 3 is tough, and tough is in all caps, but you actually really like it because you are forced to really consider what those things are. And that's where I was like, I'm like, man, I've got like these 11 things I really want to see. And then being forced to kind of quantify them and rank them and fit them for here was a really fun thing, but also stressful at times that I know you felt a little bit of both those things.
To quote Anthony in the DMs, you said could be
nice.
You said could be as large scale or as granular as you want, literally anything. And I'm here to tell you that I took full advantage of the latitude that you have provided me. So I was going through this and I was trying to get very specific. And that was my first run through. I was like, I want to be as specific as I can possibly be. And then I'm like, well, if I get too specific, I really avoid too many things that I want to talk about. And so, as you'll find out here very, very shortly, I took a lot of liberty with the range that you provided in the criteria.
I did that a little as well. My number 1 is like a cheat that includes like 7 different things, but then my 2 and my 3 are a little more specific, a little more great. It's so tough. Anytime I do these episodes, are like, oh, the top 3, I just get so stressed because quantifying them. And so I end up just like trying to like, what's an umbrella way that I can include 7 things as my number 3 or my number 1 or my number 2. All right, we'll start here. Again, for those playing at home, Joe and I are each going through our top 3 things. And again, like Joe said, it could be, well, like Joe said that I said, it could be as, wide net. It could be as granular as possible, large scale, whatever we want. I don't know Joe's answers. He doesn't know mine. We're going to keep that blind until we go. For those playing at home and watching live here on YouTube, feel free to put up into the comments what you think of each of our answers and what you're watching for or looking to watch for in terms of this camp, this preseason, anything and everything that's on your mind. I'm going to star as many of the comments as I can in a bunch of pieces. And then once we bid Joe adieu for the night, I will go back and read comments and answer things as we wind down the show. Joe, you are the guest. The floor is yours. We'll start with your number 3, unless you really feel strongly about your 1 and you want to start with number 1. You can start any way you want. I leave it up to you. You can start with 1. You can start with 3. I guess you could start with 2 if you really wanted to. But whatever you want. Pick whatever you want. The floor is genuinely yours.
Going to be strategic here and pick my number 1 thing because of what you said. It gave me an idea that we could have some overlap. So I'm going to beat you to the punch here, Anthony.
Okay.
And my number 1 thing that I'm very excited to observe at training camp are the rookies.
Okay.
It's the rookies. And I know that opens up a lot, but there's just so much there. Like, this was a foundational draft class in so many different ways that presents a lot of interest. And I think it starts with Keon Coleman, the top pick in the draft, the guy billed to be the X receiver. And I kind of look at this X receiver position and I feel like the snaps are going to be more competitive than maybe we're giving credit to. Keon Coleman in the mix, Marquez Valdez-Scantling in the mix, Chase Claypool in the mix, Mac Hollins in the mix. And I don't know that any one player is going to consistently dominate all the snaps. I think it's going to be very game plan specific. Maybe there's times where you want to work the defense vertically. That's an MVS game. Maybe there's games where you want to get the RPOs and the glance routes going and get some yards after catch, and that's a Keon Coleman game. Maybe there's times where you want to use wide zone runs and perimeter screens, and you want to have the blocking ability, and that's more into the Mac Hollins type player, right? So I think that it's going to be very specific. I doubt that any one player is just going to have a death grip on it and be like Gabe Davis, 80% of the snaps every single week. So Keon Coleman and what he does in year 1, being mindful of what I just said, fascinating. Cole Bishop at safety. What's the role? Is he starting? If he's not starting, is there a role for a third safety? Is he the third safety? I think that he's just such a player that I want to get a feel for him at camp, because I feel like in OTAs and in minicamp, nobody was talking about Cole Bishop. And it's not like safety's not a position where you can hear things. We heard all about DeMar Hamlin, right? We heard all about DeMar Hamlin. Nothing about Cole Bishop. What's the deal there? I want to find out. Dwayne Carter as a 3 technique. Is he showing up as a rookie to hold off a guy like Deshaun Williams from either making the roster or earning, snaps over him as a backup to Ed Oliver? Ray Davis, how big's the role? I mean, it's a 4th round pick in a year where James Cook was really good, but maybe there was a little bit too much volume and he wore down the stretch, and they want to have more of a shared workload. And how much does Ray Davis eat into that? What do we see from said Van Pran Granger as a rookie in terms of, do they give him chances to play guard? Does he show enough promise for us to think, well, maybe next year he could start? Edifwan Ulafosio, can he hold off a guy like Deion Jones from the roster, or Balin Spector at linebacker? Javon Solomon, can he be a steal pass rusher that had all the production in the world in college? Tylen Grable, I mean, what a fascinating guy that is. All the size, length, and athleticism you can want. I thought the tape was rough, but if there's a coach that can get it out of him, it's Aaron Cromer. I mean, look at what he's done with Ryan Vandermark. Daquan Hardy, I thought his tape was good in the slot. I think he could be a good punt returner for this team.
He's just so small, but the tape is fun.
Travis Clayton, a rugby player that's going to try to play football. That's going to be fun to watch. Gable Steveson. I mean, could there be more intriguing players when it comes to a rookie class? And so, I gave you like a million different things right there, but I want to see these rookies. I want to see what they can do in year 1, and I want to get an idea for what the team has in mind for these guys. And we'll get our first opportunity to see that at training camp.
I was trying to just not laugh uncontrollably while you spoke, because I didn't want it to be distracting or like potentially seem rude. So my number 1 is large scale. I was going to do this for my number 2, but I didn't want to go large scale back to back. So I kept this I was like, I'm going to talk. I decided to talk it up into pieces rather than cheat twice, because I had already cheated once and I felt like that was a lot. I'm right there in lockstep with you. Like, this rookie class is so interesting in a vacuum for 2024 because of everything you laid out. But then even more so going forward in terms of kind of alluding to what, you talked about high level as we led into this segment, like the old guard basically being done away with in a variety of ways on this team. So not only seeing who looks good in camp for 2024, which granted, you can't just completely extrapolate and see whatever any rookie does in 2024 doesn't necessarily mean that's what they're going to be for their career, but really seeing what this class can mean for 2024 and also potentially going forward, just where the Bills are financially. Granted, things have changed a little bit with the departure of Stephon Diggs, but seeing the state that this roster is in, where it's not a complete rebuild and blow up, but it's more of a revamping. And that notion of trying to stem the tide in both directions, where you're trying to turn things over and get better, but you're also trying to maintain how competitive you are and still compete for division titles and conference championships and things like that. Like, that's a hard thing to try to balance on the tightrope. And I think the Bills on paper have kind of done a pretty decent job of that with who they brought in and how they've turned it around. And there's so many pieces and aspects that I'm extremely intrigued to see just from an individual player standpoint, and then seeing how they tie in from a high level and a structural standpoint. That I again, tying it into going to camp tomorrow and Thursday, I really thought, like, as I was putting my list together of what to watch and who to watch for, I was like, yeah, I really could just do rookies. And I think that's something people would be interested in. It's something that I'm interested in because there's so many storylines and domino effects attached to, honestly, like, you can make a case for all of them like you just did. And then several are real focal points in terms of if they work or if they don't, and how they work if they do work really leads to a whole offshoot in terms of possibilities.
No question, dude. So like there's 91 players on this roster, so there's 91 things that I'm extremely interested in. But from the players' perspective, I thought how these rookies fit into the mix will, in a way, provide a lot of clarity about the other storylines for those position groups.
Well,
and so it's a lot to bake into one thing, but I told you I took a lot of latitude.
I like it. And honestly, again, I did the same thing. I have all these notes for it that echo a lot of what you said. I just didn't want to go into it so much because they mirror a lot of what you said, and I didn't want to be redundant. But I literally had it and like copied it and just moved it off and put something else, because I was like, I felt guilty taking liberties that much with 2 out of my 3, like I did with my 1. That's funny. I like that. So I'll go back with my number 1. And again, this one's wide scale. This is the one I 100% cheated with right off rip. I just titled it like the offensive schematics and the structure. And this ties into Keon Coleman a little bit, and a lot of that wide receiver conversation. So something I've talked about a bunch this offseason. I'm not going to get into the weeds with it again, because I've done that so much in so many episodes here. I've talked so much about how the departure of Stephon Diggs and the addition of Keon Coleman, and really just the changing of body types at wide receiver for this Bills team, that when you combine what the Bills can throw at you at 11 and 12 personnel, you have 2 rooms in your wide receiver room and your tight end room that kind of mirror one another and allow the Bills to operate similarly in each personnel grouping. You can go spread out of 11 personnel, or you can go power and kind of run it down someone's throat if you put in Keon Coleman and Mac Hollins and MBS. Curtis Samuel is a better blocker than he gets credit for. Khalil Shakir started to come on as a blocker last year. We'll see who ends up being, wide receiver 5, 6, whatever happens there. And then you go into the tight end room, where you've got Dalton Kincaid and Dawson Knox, who both provide receiving upside and athleticism and pass catching ability, but both can function as blockers. Dalton Kincaid, less so of an inline Y type than Dawson Knox, but still can get the job done, especially against nickels, especially against safeties. And he's a willing blocker against defensive linemen and defensive tackle or second level defenders. And I look at what they have there, and Shakir and Samuel are honestly kind of like, when you look at skill sets in the wide receiver and tight end room, but even just wide receiver, Shakir and Curtis Samuel are basically like the outliers of the group in terms of like the size, frame, physicality aspect, body type, compared to the Mac Hollinses, the MBSs, the Keon Colemans, potentially Chase Claypool, like these bigger type of dudes. And I'm really looking for this year the Bills to reduce their formational width. Last year, they had the second highest formational width in the league in 2023. They were 4th in the Dorsey weeks, and then they were 1st, so the widest formations, basically like the largest amount of spread, in the Brady weeks in the regular season. The 5 teams with the lowest formational width in 2023, going from lowest, San Francisco 49ers, Los Angeles Rams, Miami Dolphins, Houston Texans, Detroit Lions. All very good offenses. And if we go by EPA per play, the Niners first in EPA per play, the Rams ninth, the Dolphins fourth, the Texans 15th, but had some CJ Stroud injury pieces. And then the Lions were eighth in EPA per play. And I look at the trends in this league and how you zig when defenses are zagging. And I see defenses, we all know the conversation, too high coverage structures and nickel is base and smaller defensive tackles to penetrate and attack the QB, yada, yada. And a way to counter that is by going with athletic, bigger bodies like Dalton Kincaid and Dawson Knox in 12 personnel aspects, or going with more physical, bigger bodied, willing blockers in your 11 personnel. And I really look for the Bills to borrow from two teams in particular, the Los Angeles Rams and the Detroit Lions. The Rams had a 95% 11 personnel rate in 2023, but their run game was very good. They were seventh in EPA for running back runs, sixth in EPA per attempt for running back runs. And out of 11 personnel, they were fifth in EPA for running back runs and sixth in EPA per attempt. Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp, tremendous pass catchers, very good as receivers, actual receivers, but they block like tight ends. You can insert them on second level dudes. They can wash down edges. They can erase nickels and do all that kind of fun stuff. And then you look at the Detroit Lions, who last year had a 64% 11 personnel usage rate. And so much is talked about Amon-Ra St. Brown and Sam Laporta and even Jameson Williams, and rightfully so, given their skill sets and excitement. But Amon-Ra St. Brown is a dog as a blocker. And then after him, the receivers with the second and third most snaps for the Detroit Lions, Josh Reynolds and Donovan Peoples-Jones. And you go and you turn on the tape, the NFC Championship game, for example, that first drive, really that whole first half when the Lions are just working it, Amon-Ra St. Brown is just crushing the Niners nickel Lenore like left and right. And then Reynolds is sitting there, again, all in condensed formations. Reynolds is sitting there washing Nick Bosa left and right and just escorting him down the line, sealing him, and Gibbs is out the front door. Montgomery is out the front door. And the Lions are another team, overall second in the league in rushing EPA per attempt for running back carries. And out of 11 personnel, they were first in EPA and third in EPA per attempt. And they also had a 48% gap run rate out of 11 personnel. Rams went with gap as well, but mainly because they run a lot of it and pairing it with their zone. I look for the Bills with their body types that they have at wide receiver and tight end, with the trends that we're seeing defensively and how this offense is starting to move, and the solid foundation they already have of knowing who they are in the run game and what they can do. Granted, it may change a little bit given the changes up front on the offensive line, but I'm looking for those schematic pieces early on in terms of formational width right off the bat. I want to see how many condensed sets are they going? Are they going with tight bunch? Are they, putting an inline tight end and then, hipping somebody off? How many heavy personnel groupings are they using? How much are they going spread versus condensed out of those heavier personnel groupings or 11? Really just the ability to put a defense into a bind because of the body types they have at 11 and 12. And just tying that all in with the personnel groupings, the wide receiver usage and reps. Dalton Kincaid maybe getting some more work as kind of an X receiver, and then seeing some of the run game stuff in terms of gap and zone. They were one of the leaders last year in gap scheme runs. How much does that stay? How much tackle pull are they leaning into? Or if they go more condensed, which works better with duo and then wide zone and zone in general, and then how you can marry the run and the pass with it in terms of building your play action game off of it. So that was my kind of cheat, wide scale, large scale answer. It really starts with the condensed formation aspect, just because I think that's where I think you best use the wide receivers that you have, like the Mac Hollinses and the Keon Colemans and MBS and all those guys. Like, granted, not that you can't go spread, and the Bills still will. They're not just all of a sudden just going to become this closed type formation type of team, but really just taking advantage of the size and athleticism and using that to kind of put defenses into a bind out of power looks, but then also out of spread in both 11 and 12, and then all the trappings that come with that.
Love that talking point. And it's interesting, the offenses that you brought up, I mean, they're all teams and offenses that prioritize wide receivers that block, right? It's no block, no rock. That's definitely a thing that you hear in those places.
Yeah.
And people like to gloss over things like cornerbacks and tackling and wide receivers and blocking, but those are critical traits. Like, just because you're not the one catching the football and creating yards doesn't mean that you're not creating offense for your team.
Mm,
And so I think I love that you brought that up. And it's definitely something that the Bills, from a personnel perspective, are built to be able to do with
yes.
the size that they've added at wide receiver, and kind of just make defenses wrong no matter how they align, because you do have so many big bodies and versatility that you can tap into.
Yes.
Um, Also interesting that you had 4 Shanahan offenses there, and then of course the
Yeah.
Lions.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that
And then
that
Ben
was
Johnson.
kind of fun to kind of think that through. But I never knew that correlation between formational width and some of the better offenses in the NFL. And I would have never guessed that the Bills led the way
Yeah.
in terms of width. That kind of surprises me. But I think there's a case to be made that maybe some of Josh Allen's best football has come with that, right? With Brian Daboll and really spacing the field and picking out matchups and all
Mhm.
that. So it's fascinating because whether it's that, whether it's the types of receivers that they have, it's not necessarily where we've seen the best Josh Allen.
Mhm.
So how does that work together? It's going to be fascinating to find out, but I love that talking point.
And that's a great point too, because the Bills, to your point, like haven't needed to do that. It's been like our mutant is Josh Allen. We're going to spread you out so we can help him identify coverages easier
Mm-hmm.
pre-snap, and then we're going to attack you. And it's also too, I mean, like one of their best run concepts last year, all those tackle pull runs work so well out of spread. And it's such a great complementary piece out of spread. And then if you add the RPO element into it, it's just like, okay, we're just going to go 2x2 gun and spread all the time. And good luck trying to stop it. But what initially brought me to, so the formational width was the part that came second when I initially did this work in the offseason. The reason I started with those offenses, and it's funny how it tied into the formational piece, each of those 5 offenses, maybe not the Texans as much, but the Niners, the Rams, the Dolphins, and the Lions all have a player or players that operate in a way that allow you to access more of the menu without having to turn the page. Being in a certain personnel grouping and being able to do almost anything you want out of it, or putting a defense into a bind. The Niners are filled with those dudes, Debo and McCaffrey and George Kittle. But then the presence of Kyle Juszczyk, like they run so much 22 and 21 because you can do anything you want with Juszczyk. He can block as a true fullback. You can put him out in the route distribution from the backfield or lined up like as a wide receiver pre-snap. The Rams, I already mentioned what they can do with Kupp and Puka as blockers and pass catchers. The Dolphins do similar things with Alec Ingold like the Niners do with Kyle Juszczyk. He's the guy that's leading their whole RPO flood game, and he's running that wheel route. And it's like, okay, do we match with base, or can our nickel guy mash against him in the run? Like, what do we do there? And then again with the Lions, their 11 personnel grouping, bigger bodied, physical, willing blocking wide receivers who can also function as pass catchers. Granted, they have a really tremendous offensive line, and that helps them lean into the run game and the play action game. But that's where I think this Bills offense is. Like, I think at the end of the year, Kincaid could be a guy where we say, that's the guy who it's like, he can go get you a bucket. He can go win one-on-one, and you're confident in it. Right now, I think the offense is built more for mismatch creation, Joe Brady pushing the right buttons and pulling the right levers, and really kind of taking advantage of schematics as much as he can and creating leverage with motion and shifts and doing all of these pieces. And that tying into something you said, which is, you were talking about the rookies and you talked about Coleman and the wide receiver grouping. I really think that's why you're going to see so many different things from week to week, because this week might be a heavy 11 personnel, run it down your throat week. Next week, it might be a heavy 11 personnel, spread and pass. The next week, it might be a lot of 12 or a lot of 22 or whatever. They've got this grouping of people, of players that are, the sum is greater than the individual parts. And it's all on Joe Brady to maximize them and push those buttons at the right time. And a lot of those top offenses that I mentioned did that by starting with those versatile pieces, but then adding in the lower formational width to really put a defense into a bind with less tells, then marrying the run and the pass and kind of putting the defense through hell and trying to have to account for everything.
Well, I think your talking point there is a good segue into my second talking point, which is the coordinators. I think all 3 of them. I want to lump in Matthew Smiley here. I think it's something that I'm really interested in finding out. And I know that you got into a very specific conversation about Joe Brady and formational width and the versatility of skill sets and how that can force matchups. There's a lot of interesting things there. But from a higher level with with Joe Brady, hard to come in and coordinate someone else's offense, right? That's exactly
Yes.
what he did in the middle of the season. And so the whole time we knew, well, he's not going to be able to put his full stamp on this unit in the middle of the season. Well, now he's had an offseason.
Yes.
And he's been involved in personnel, obviously. And like you said, it's kind of on him to piece it all together. And so what does that look like? And same thing like Bobby Babich. He's been around, but this is his first crack to be the defensive coordinator. For him, I'm really fascinated in finding out just how much in command he is of the defense. Like,
yes.
And you and I both have been to enough Bills practices to see what it looks like when Sean McDermott's the defensive coordinator, see what it looks like when Leslie Frazier's the defensive coordinator. How is that different than when Bobby Babich is the defensive coordinator? And I know that everyone's interested in who's going to call the defense and all that type of stuff, but I'm just generally trying to get a feel for what is his identity and can we feel it on this defense? And now both of those guys coming in and the buzzword that we hear for both of them, whether it's players or coaches commenting on them, is juice, right? They bring a lot of juice, a lot of energy. And so there's going to be that piece of it, but also, all right, you can be energetic, you can have juice, all of that. Can you run an offense? Can you run a defense? Can you layer together and sequence plays? And I think that's going to be fascinating to find out on both sides of the football. But then I do want to lump in Matthew Smiley, who his first season on the job, however you want to measure special teams, he ranked very, very high. The next year on the job, not so much. And we saw some concerning regression in a number of categories. And so not only are you kind of curious in finding out this year about Matthew Smiley, but I mean, Tyler Bass, and can he be the kicker the Bills are paying him to be? The punter battle between Sam Martin and Jack Browning. Is there really a battle there? But also the kickoff stuff, right? I mean, this is
yes.
I've been on record as saying this is the most significant rule change that's happened in my lifetime in the NFL. And I think no one's going to figure it out this year, right? It's going to literally week to week. There's going to be evolution with it. I've talked myself into circles into thinking about what this is going to be. Like I almost thought to myself, is it going to come a point where teams say, you know what, we don't want to deal with this. Here's the touchback. Start from the 30, right? Like, is that a possibility? We'll find out. But how the Bills plan on covering kickoffs, how they plan on returning kickoffs, so much of that's dependent on what Matthew Smiley's vision is for it. And so I think with all three of these coordinators, there are massive storylines that exist. But just generally speaking, as I think about, all right, what am I excited about for camp? I want to see these coordinators and how they plan on attacking the season.
I love that answer. I want to touch on Brady and Babich for a little bit because it's something I've touched on throughout the offseason. Even you and I have touched on Lockdown as we've been going through this offseason, even when I had you on for the draft as well. Like that, that presence of starting with Brady, it's something that I don't think can be understated. The idea of, last year was not Joe Brady's offense. It is impossible to uninstall an offense and install a new one mid-year, week 11, 10, week 11 when that happened. It's impossible. So he was running Dorsey's offense with some of his little tweaks and variations and things he liked to incorporate. You put as many of those elements as you can into it, but it's not your offense. So seeing what the full Joe Brady experience looks like this year, I think is super fun. And incorporating, he's talked about it a little bit, right? Like keeping some of the Dorsey elements, and Dorsey kept some of the Daboll elements. Like you want to just keep what Josh is comfortable with, but what really is his spin or his take on things. And, I think the biggest thing last year, like all jokes aside, was like more Ty Johnson and then more schemed up routes for the running backs and plays that are designed to go to the running backs, taking advantage of that. But I'm interested to see how I thought he did a good job of, as opposed to Dorsey's offense, I think, was very cerebral for a quarterback. It was very much like this over here beats this over there beats that, go out, read the coverage, execute, and then mixing in those option routes with it as well. It was very cerebral, a lot of thinking and a lot of time on task mentally in order to make it work. I thought Brady did a little bit better of making everything flow from one side to the other and kind of not making things easier for Josh in terms of his reads, but allowing things to play out and allowing him to do things simpler or more efficiently from a progression standpoint and tying things in. I like how he incorporated more 4 strong and just the ability to kind of drain those zones and mixing in more flood concepts.
BKC with that 4 strong. Absolutely. Killed him with it. Yeah.
They use it a ton. The multiple completions to Knox out of it. The touchdown to Cook. Yeah. The touchdown to Cook was off 4 strong. Like, that's such a really fun element. It was ironic that it came against the Chiefs, who Andy Reid's been using 4 strong stuff for friggin' ever. And yeah, seeing what when he gets his full hands to mold this offense, what does it look like going in? So I think that's a great point. The Babbage one is super fun too. That's something else. I had it as like a little element that I'm looking for tomorrow. Like when they go team and they're doing those pieces, exactly like you said, like you can tell when the defense is being run by McDermott or when it's being run by somebody else. And my eyes are going to be glued to Babbage and seeing, like, is he sitting back or is he on the walkie coordinating everything and choreographing this dance and kind of, because we still haven't really gotten any concrete, like, you know, he's the DC, but I'm calling the plays. They've kind of kept that close to the vest. Very interested with that. And I love the piece with Smiley and special teams in general. I really think, to your point of nobody figuring it out this year, I think within that, the teams that figure it out the best early on could really steal like a couple games potentially in the first like half of the season or quarter of the season until everybody catches up and is like, okay, this team's crushing it. Let's copycat what they do. Let's put tons of heavy dudes as the 9 guys blocking up front. Let's run this trick play. Let's do this. Let's change our coverage unit like this. The idea of special teams mattering again is something that I love. Devin Hester is one of my favorite players of all time. And I thought it was always must-see TV anytime there was a kickoff or a punt. Even Dante Hall for the Chiefs a little bit before that. Like, I just thought, there was like
Josh Cribbs.
Josh Cribbs, yeah. Like, and then even going back to the day with Mitchell and Metcalf and all those dudes that kind of made returning something special. Even with the Bills, Terrence McGee was like
Roscoe
sick.
Parrish.
Yeah, they would kick and you got out of your seat. And now that when games start, I'm in my seat ready for kickoff, but I also know like I can wait another couple minutes. They're just going to kick it out of the end zone and then the team's going to take the ball and it's going to be nothing. And let alone the schematic component with it now, not just the volume of returns we'll see, but the schematic element attached to it. I think that's a really great point because I want to know who takes advantage of it the most early on, and then what do teams do to counter it or then copy it going forward. So that's a cool one because it impacts the Bills, but also something that's tied into league-wide as well. And yeah, you can make a case really for any of the coordinators and also some of the individual coaches as well. That was very well stated. I like that.
Listen, I lived through the drought era Bills, and I remember kickoff return with Terrence McGee and punt return with Roscoe Parrish being the best chances the Bills had to score. So I looked forward to those plays. Are you kidding me? And then I also remember, who was that guy that they had? Was it who was that DB? I had his name and I lost it.
McKelvin?
Oh, no, it wasn't McKelvin. Well, geez, he was good until the freaking
Monday night game against New England.
Who is that boring? He was Watson. Was his last name Watson? Was it Chris Watson? It's this DB that they wind up using all the time as a returner, and he never did anything exciting.
Oh, damn,
I'll have to look that. Stay tuned. I shouldn't have brought
like
that up if I couldn't execute, but I
like it. I should have been able to. You threw up the alley. I should have been able to oop it.
Is it Chris Watson? Is that his name?
Now I want to really know.
Oh.
What year? When in the drought?
This is going to drive me nuts.
It's driving me nuts.
Somebody in the chat's got to know what I'm talking about.
I would say somebody in the chat help out. No, it's not Roscoe Parrish. We got Roscoe.
No, he wasn't good. He just got a ton of opportunity.
It was somebody who was not good.
It's Chris Watson. No, I was.
Okay, damn.
It's Chris Watson, yes.
What years?
2000 to 2002.
Oh, wow. Damn, I don't even remember.
Well, he had one season as the primary guy. He averaged, I'm not wrong about this, 4.9 yards per return on 33 attempts. That's horrible.
Oh my god.
4.9.
Oh, Bill's Fever came close as you answered. He said the punt catcher under Wade Phillips. So that's
him. This is him. This is him. He was so boring. Wow. So boring.
Wow. Damn. Yeah, that's not good.
20.3 yards per kick return. I mean, he stinks.
Oh, that's brutal.
I told you he stinks. Chris Watson catching strays over here.
Yeah, not great.
His birthday was June 30th, turned 47. So happy birthday, Chris Watson.
Daniel came in and gave this gem. He said, Watson was a CB. We traded a 4th round from Denver during the Wade Phillips era. Wow, great pull.
And he wound up just being a bad kick returner.
Wow, great pull. Yeah, that escapes me. I think I blocked out a ton of that time because of as I was coming into my fandom. And I've talked about this before. Like, all I grew up was obviously like the 90s Bills and all the adults telling me how great the Bills were. And the first playoff game I got geeked up for was when Natron Means and the Jags ran all over the Bills in Buffalo and beat them. And then the Music City Miracle, I felt, came like right after that. So I think like I've just mentally scarred out those times. That's a great. I like how the chat came through. Well done. Good times. And Daniel said Wade described him as a punt catcher
Right,
rather
he
than
did.
as a punt returner.
Right, this is all true. What a great moment for us to be able to
Yeah,
go
and that's
down
why
this.
Bill's Fever earlier said the punt catcher under Wade. I love this.
Yes. During the 2000, I'm on his Wikipedia page here. And then he was traded to the Lions before 2003, but never appeared in a game.
Oh god, just
wow,
absolutely brutal. What a
wow.
time! What a fun time to be a Bills fan. Then, oh man, good pull. You actually brought more by not having the answer readily available and then going down, and it brought some fun and excitement. I like it. You're just bringing all the off-topic stuff
Random,
tonight.
brother.
I like it.
So I mean, I'm glad I'm here because I get a chance to stay up late, and I've not been doing that, and I got to start doing it with the season coming up. Normally I'm asleep by now, so that's
true.
This is Joe's mind as he tries to go to sleep. Here it is.
Marino at night, kind of just emulating that bean style. I like it. Oh, that was fun. All the off-topic stuff has me so excited tonight. It just keeps making me want to be like, scrap everything we're talking about. My number 2, not the sexiest, but one that just keeps coming back to me. I want to see how the depth chart at edge shakes out. I think we've got Greg Rousseau, who is the clear one, but then what happens at 2, and does what happens at camp carry into the season? For example, like if we're not seeing a lot of Von Miller heavily featured in camp or the preseason, is that just a sign of him having a reduced or a specialized role? Or is it just like, no, we know who Von is. We're kind of keeping the horse in the stable and he'll get some more edge 2 stuff once the season starts. Also baked into that conversation is AJ Epinesa ready to be a full-time edge 2? That's kind of what my anticipation is. Like, I feel like in terms of snap share, I feel like he sees the edge 2 snaps this season opposite of Groot. But last year, granted, somewhat smaller sample size in terms of how much he rushed the quarterback and when he did. Didn't have a lot of stuff in known passing downs, but despite all that, he was tied for 27th in pass rush productivity amongst 118 qualifying edges. He was first in batted passes, which was a legitimate aspect of his game. He was able to drop into coverage on simulated pressures and creepers and displayed his athleticism. Can he maintain what he showed last year? Can he maintain that success with a larger sample size and be consistent as a pass rusher and as a run defender? Either way, I think the top 3 is kind of set when you're looking at Groot, Epinesa, and I think Von returns to enough form that he's like an edge 3, edge 2, some kind of piece in there. And then after that, who comes in at edge 4? Who comes in at edge 5? Do they keep 5 edges? Do they maybe keep 6 because someone has some versatility? And I look at someone like Dwan Smoot, who, if he can get close to his pre-Achilles form, his production and skill set and play style should almost lock him in to a roster spot. The physicality, the ability to compress the pocket, the ability as a spiker and cause disruption, but also get penetration in 2-man games. Plus, he can reduce down in known passing situations, which also helps with the roster flexibility. And again, maybe allows them to do some different things with how they keep or with who they keep. In 2022, before he tore his Achilles in week 16 that year in December, amongst 126 qualifying edges, he was tied for 36th in pass rush productivity. He was tied for 56th in total pressures. He was tied for 53rd in hurries, and he was tied for 31st in win percentage. I would take that as my edge 4 every single day of the week if he can get back to being that guy. And as I've said on the show, if you remember the Bills playing the Jags and not doing so good, he had good games against the Bills on multiple occasions. And then if you keep him, if he's the 4, who's edge 5? Is it Javon Solomon? Is it Casey Toohill? Is it Kingsley Jonathan? Do they look for more of athleticism and pass rush potential? If so, does that leans more into Solomon and Kingsley, or do they want more known quantity and run defense? If so, that means more Casey Toohill. How does special teams impact who they keep? We know they rotate so much, and the defensive line is so important. And I think the interior, is pretty set in terms of Ed, Daquan, Carter, and for me, it's Austin Johnson is the backup 1 tech behind Daquan. Granted, it could be Williams, but I think it'll be Austin Johnson. And what they do at edge is obviously so important because I don't think they have a top tier pass rusher yet, though Groot could make that jump. But I do think they have all this depth. They have all these B players at edge. And I don't mean that negatively. I just mean they have a lot of dudes that they can rotate and then try to use situationally. But does anyone emerge from a top tier perspective? And who rounds out that group because whoever rounds it out is going to see snaps because of how much they rotate and then how that ties into what they do with defensive tackle in terms of roster keeping and everything. I think that for me is a big one.
I love that talking point, and yeah, I'm glad you brought up the efficiency that Epinesa had. And if you just extrapolate that, like pre-rib injury and post-rib injury, he was really good.
He was on a tear.
Weeks 1 through 13, in terms of Pro Football Focus pass rush productivity, 10th in the NFL amongst edge rushers with at least 100 snaps rushing the passer. And then weeks 14 through the divisional round, he's 94th amongst edge rushers that have 40 or he was really, I mean, in a, you had 221 pass rush snaps for the season. I'm sure you can add 120 to that this coming season. Can he take what he did in that sample size over a greater sample size? Because if so, I mean, he's going to be a pretty impactful player. Mm-hmm. I'm fascinated to find that out, but I love this special teams conversation as it relates to these edge rushers, because I think it's going to matter a ton, especially because I think these kick returns are now going to be in some ways just like wide zone runs. And that's what defensive ends do. They set edges, they create leverage, they keep an outside arm free, and they make tackles. Like, that's what they do. And I think that will help you a lot with the covering of kicks. But then also, I think you want enough size plus athleticism to be able to block in space on the kick return. And like, maybe there's a role for these guys. And so I do look at Kingsley Jonathan / Javon Solomon / Casey Toohill all competing for one spot. I think that Solomon has the upper hand as the draft pick that I think has the most rush potential. Kingsley Jonathan's interesting to me, but let's be real. I mean, he wasn't even that impactful at Syracuse, and his best season was followed up as a year that he didn't even start for Syracuse, right? Like, he goes to the Bears, a team that's been desperate for edge. He didn't stick there. Like, he's interesting, but I want to keep him in perspective. And then Toohill, dude, I didn't like the tape, man. I just thought he was a try-hard guy.
That's it. He plays the run, and he's got a motor, which is fun.
I don't know, man. You got to be more technical than that. So if everyone's healthy and they do keep 5, I think it's those 3 for one spot. But what factor is most important to the Bills? Find out.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. If I had to bet, I think they keep 5, and I think it's Groot, Epinesa, Von Miller, Smoot, and then Javon Solomon. I think Solomon's athleticism and just, that pass rush ceiling. I am very interested. He's another one going into your first point of the rookies. Like, I want to see how his rush style plays against NFL length, strength, and size. Can he continue to win around the corner with that dip and that bend and that lean like he did in college? Is he getting chucked around against the run? And even if so, that's fine. Can he be enough of a hunter and a pass rush specialist that he can work on those third downs? And it's just, I did an episode on him last week, just breaking down a bunch of his tape, and him legitimately showing like pass rush plan and setups and moves and doing the things that we talk about all the time, right? Like doing things in the first quarter that he can set up for something later in the fourth. And then not only doing that, but having that athleticism and bend. It's something the Bills haven't readily gone to with their edge grouping, especially dudes they've drafted. He was very much an outlier, especially from a height and weight standpoint. Decent arm length versus compared to what they normally do, but good arm length for his size. But yeah, their averages are like 6'5", 272 pounds at edge, and he's almost 6'1", and he's 246 pounds. Like, I watched his tape pre-draft.
I didn't grade him for the Bills. I didn't think he was a scheme fit.
Exactly. Same thing. Like, I graded him for myself and my rankings in general, but he wasn't anywhere on my Bills radar at all.
Right. And Bean kind of said as much. He's like, "Oh, we thought some odd front team would draft him." He's like, it's kind of to the point where he's like, "Well, let's do it."
Yeah, screw it. And I think that's based on that need of who's going to provide that pass rush pop off the edge. Like, he's, from a college standpoint, a known quantity and polished in that regard. And then the stats and the metrics all speak to it. Yeah, and then with his athleticism and length and what he can do, speaks to him being able to play special teams on return and both on coverage and seeing what he can do. I like that. All right, your number 3. What do you got?
My number 3, and I want to set this up like this. We always get so excited about the new players, right? The rookies, the free agent signings, the players that they trade for. We want to see what they look like. I think the 2 players that feel like new additions that really aren't, that can make the biggest impact, are 2 guys on defense. It's Matt Milano and it's Von Miller, right?
Oh, nice.
Sort of like both of them returning from injury. Matt Milano definitely returning from the injury suffered against Jacksonville, tibial plateau fracture. Not a nothing injury, but also not a ligament. And I think he's going to come back. I want to see what he's going to look like. But Matt Milano is one of the elite linebackers in the NFL. And I think that's not just me being a Bills fan. Like, that's what people think of him as. We saw the Jeremy Fowler article. He's the number 4 linebacker in the NFL in a season where he played 4.5 games. I mean, Matt Milano's a dude.
Yes.
And what really excites me is not just Matt Milano and his return, but it's him with Terrell Bernard and this whole idea that they wanted to transition away from the Tremaine Edmonds, Mike linebacker, 250 pounds. They wanted 2 matchup guys. Right? This is what the vision is for the defense. And we only got to see it for 4.5 games. And damn it looked good in 4.5 games.
Yeah.
And it's Terrell Bernard's first 4 starts coming off of missing preseason with a hamstring injury.
Yep.
So, like, we don't even really know what the ceiling is, but I got a feeling it's pretty freaking high. So get excited about whatever you want, but like Matt Milano coming back should be at the top of your list of things that get you excited about something that's new to this football team.
Yeah.
Then on top of that, it is Von Miller. And I've really kind of become outspoken about this, but my biggest gripe with the Bills, or my biggest concern, is do they have a guy on that defensive line that can take over in clutch situations and close out football games? And for the 11 games prior to Von Miller being, injured, he was that guy for this Bills team.
The guy who could just go get you a bucket, win a one-on-one, close the game out.
Right. It's like you can't like you're going to alter protection schemes, right? Everybody wants a number 1 receiver, dude. I want a number 1 pass rusher, man. I want a Watt, I want a Garrett, I want a Parson. Like, I want that so bad. And I don't think Von Miller's like, he's 35, right? So you on one hand, you're like excited because he's 2 years removed from the ACL and everybody says it's a 2-year deal. And so he's there, but then you're like, oh crap, he's 35 years old.
Yeah. So not
right.
great.
So I don't know what to expect, man. But if he can be like something close to what he was for the Bills, how big would that be for this defense? And if you take that plus whatever we anticipate from Rousseau and what Epinesa can be, and Smoot is this like supercharged Shaq Lawson and this appealing young player, probably Solomon, like maybe this edge rusher group will be better than I anticipate. But it's Matt Milano, it's Von Miller, it's their returns and what they can mean for the football team, because to me, those are blue chippers, the potential to be blue chippers and huge difference makers if they can be themselves.
This was I had several like honorable mentions. This was my number 4. This was my first honorable mention, the return of Matt Milano and the return of maybe pre-injury version of himself, Von Miller. And I'll start with Von just because, again, it ties into like my most recent point. I don't worry about the depth at edge. I worry about the top tier production from a pass rush standpoint, because Groot is A+ against the run. He is one of the best run defenders in the league, let alone edge. He's legitimately one of the best. But as a pass rusher, and granted, he's been banged up, and he gets banged up on his wheels, his ankle, his foot, and all that kind of stuff. I feel like as a pass rusher, he's at best maybe like a B+, but I feel like he's more of a B and kind of like a B+, which again is fine if he's the 2 and you're running with a true 1 at edge from a pass rush standpoint. And so I wonder, where does that top tier production come from? Or do they have to win by getting creative with 2-man games or 5 and 6-man pressures? Do you have to really lean into simulateds and creepers because you can't just let your front 4 go hunt because you don't have somebody that can consistently win on that outside? And what was so nice about Von is not only could he get you a bucket, but he could get you that bucket against top tier dudes. It didn't matter if he was facing like a really crappy right tackle or he was facing like one of the best in the league. He had that ability to win. That's also part of what has me excited with Epinesa, and I know the sample size is small, but going back and watching that Philly game and watching him beat Jordan Mailata over and over in the way he won, I was like, oh, did you finally figure it out? But then you just got banged up and we didn't get to like see it. And just having that top tier production at edge. And the Matt Milano point from you is tremendous, and it ties into my third point a little bit as well. I think the strength of, as long as Milano is good, which he looks to be, I think the strength of this defense, I really, 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 really like the pairing of Christian Benford and Rasul Douglas. But I think the strength of this defense is on that second level with Matt Milano, Terrell Bernard, and Taron Johnson. Milano and Taron Johnson are already all-pro players at their position. I think Terrell Bernard, if he makes another jump in his game or stays on the trajectory that he was last year, you could see him getting some all-pro consideration. That second level is going to be so important to this defense. And a healthy Matt Milano, man, just really opens up what they're able to do with their pressure packages, with their coverages, tying everything together. And he was already starting to communicate and kind of set the defense in a lot of ways. He goes down. Bernard steps up and fills that role. Now you've got both of them working in tandem. Taron Johnson's a tremendous communicator. Like that second level, being able to be the bridge and marry the front with the back is such a tremendous and interesting aspect. And yeah, I'm right there with you. Like seeing how he comes back. I hope I'm not taking this for granted. And kind of like you said, like I'm assuming Matt Milano comes back and is like good to go and can be like, I'm more concerned, like, what do we get from Vaughn, even though he's 2 years removed? I'm comfortable, and I hope I'm not jinxing this. I don't even want to say it. Like, my assumption is just Matt Milano comes back and is what he was in the first 4 games, except for the entirety of the year. Right? That's your thought. No, you're not jinxing it?
Yeah, no, I certainly hope that. I don't want to diminish the injury and what it takes to come back by any means, but I'm not going to lie. I watched the NFL release 24 minutes of Matt Milano highlights, and I watched that the other night, and I had a good time. I had a real good time watching that, being reminded of the absolute dog that he is. But, I mean, it's the pair, right? It's those guys together and what this defense wants to be. And, you know, thinking about Thomas Davis and Luke Kuechly in Carolina, and I'm not going to say that this is the second coming of that, but they got really aggressive with those players. Very instinctive, quick guys, can shoot gaps, can play sideline to sideline. And I think there's so much that they can do with those players. And like what Terrell Bernard did under those circumstances of really missing, like platooning, let's be honest, platooned throughout almost the entire offseason. Then he's gone because he has a hamstring injury, misses the preseason. And he comes back, plays at a high level, then loses his running mate, and then loses his nose tackle. You know what I mean? Like those are critical pieces.
Those are important to him.
Right. To him being able to do his thing. And he still made the plays that he did and made the impact that he did despite all of that. Let's see the full vision here. And I think that the Bills, they might not have like elite game wrecker takeover games defensive linemen. Yeah. But I think they're really deep. And I think that their interior depth is better with Austin Johnson and Deshaun Williams and Dwayne Carter than it was with Tim Settle and Jordan Phillips. That helps those guys as well on the second level.
Very well said. And I agree to that point. This is probably just a me thing. He doesn't offer anything from pass rush standpoint, but Elianku is really good against the run. Like he knows how to take on a double team and just be a problem inside. Like even knowing that he's like further down, but I'm like, I could be comfortable if he has to do spot duty for a game or two, like he did against the Ravens a couple years ago. But yeah, I echo those sentiments on the defensive line. Like I worry about top tier game record dudes, but I'm comfortable just rolling out like hockey style. They may not have like a number 1 line, but they've got like 3 twos, and then their checking line is really like a third line. Like, and I'm comfortable rolling out that depth and just kind of winning by attrition and being able to have good depth and fresh dudes in the third and fourth quarter and just hunt potentially against offensive linemen. I like that. That's well said. My third point ties into Matt Milano a little bit, also ties into some rookie conversation. Actually, you and I talked about this briefly on an episode of Locked On earlier this offseason. I want to keep an eye out for the defensive coverage structures and the domino effect that comes from those coverage structures. And it starts with who the starting safeties are. Is it Edwards and Rapp? Is it Edwards and Bishop? Is it Bishop and Rapp? Whatever the hell. And then what that leads to. I think Taylor Rapp and Mike Edwards are more similar than they are different. And while neither are ideal as a single high post safety, I think Edwards can do well enough and can be fine in that role. Cole Bishop is more athletic than both and has more straight line speed and burst. But for me, and I say this all the time, and I don't mean this as a dig, I like him less the further he gets away from the line of scrimmage. Not that he's bad, the further he gets. I like him more closer. I think he's best suited as like an apex player or like a Buzz Robert type safety who is at his best when coming downhill, being in and around the box. You're blitzing him. You're having him man up on tight ends and running backs coming out of the backfield. You're using his frame, athleticism, and speed to just muck things up in and around the hook curls and the flats and around that line of scrimmage. And again, doesn't mean he can't function deep. I just like him less in that world as of now. And Sean McDermott has always been tremendous with getting the most out of his safeties at every stop in his NFL journey, Philly and Carolina, and then here in Buffalo. He knows how to set them up for success. And within that, knowing how to set them up for success, he also knows their limitations and how to not set them up for failure. So based on all that, whatever that starting safety tandem is, I think impacts the ratio we see of two high versus single high coverages, and also impacts how effective they are in both of those coverage structures. So for example, say it's Rapp and it's Edwards. The initial question I have is, okay, do they play less single high? And if when they do they keep Edwards in the post more than Rapp? And then within that comes certain vulnerabilities you open yourself up to in terms of coverage tells, mismatches that can be created in other ways, things that the offense can do to dictate to your defense. And then not just from a coverage standpoint, but as you know, the coverages you play on the back end impact how you fit the run and what is then asked of your front seven. So if you're playing more too high because your starting safeties are Mike Edwards and Taylor Rapp, how is that impacting things going forward? And what helps the Bills here is they have a tremendous second level of Matt Milano, Terrell Bernard, and Taron Johnson. But the more you live in those two high structures, the more is asked of them, and the more is asked of the defensive line to win up front while your safeties come from depth to fit the run. Also, another helping point here, if that is the case, is this puts more onto your cornerbacks in the run game to act as force players and fill players and fold guys. And that works because Rasul Douglas and Christian Benford are very strong against the run as well. So it's not like, oh God, the defense can really be on fire based on who starts. I'm just more interested in seeing the schematic impact of who starts and what it leads to. Even with Bishop, who is more athletic and fast and has more versatility, I feel like there's a lot of sameness or like for like in the safety room, but with different sliders turned up in different ways. And I'm really interested to see how that impacts a defense that for forever, I mean, the name of my friggin' show is Disguise Coverage because of Hyde and Poyer and just what they could do and the interchangeability on the back end. They were at the forefront of removing the strong and free from safeties. And it was just, nope, here's a safety here and here's a safety here. Granted, they each had their skill sets that leaned a little bit more, Hyde being more of a traditional free and Poyer having some more skill set pieces that lean into a strong, but they had so much interchangeability and they were at the forefront of that movement. And now I think they don't have as much interchangeability or fluidity because a lot of their skill sets, especially for Edwards and Rapp, lean more towards Poyer-esque than they do Hyde-esque. And then how does that impact what they do from a coverage structure standpoint, but then also in fitting the run in a day and age where it seems like a lot of NFL teams are starting to bring the run back and the run is coming more in vogue. And then how does that force your hand if you don't want to walk a safety down? And then if you do, and who's where and who's doing what, and that whole schematic conversation.
I think we see that, excuse me, pretty similarly. What's interesting about the disguised elements is you kind of saw them tap into Taron Johnson a little bit with that point as well. Like they would spin him out and he'd play him deep middle or deep half.
They would do some things where they're running like Tampa 2 invert or like Tampa 2 robber, however you want to like classify it. And they'd be in a too high look pre-snap. And then Hyde would drop down as that pull runner robber. The safety would switch over and Taron's dropping from the slot as a split field safety. I loved that. Sorry, I don't want to interrupt, but I love that aspect.
So I wonder if we see even more of that, but I've talked myself in circles speculating on the safeties because I see it like you in that there's not necessarily a Hyde type player. I guess to me, it's Mike Edwards is the guy that's most versatile in terms of defending deep zones, or if you wanted to have a one high. And I think that there's the most value that Rapp and Bishop give you is as excuse me, as lower safeties closer to the line of scrimmage.
Yeah.
You'd like to think that Bishop, so much untapped potential. And at Utah, I thought that was where he was at his best, but we didn't necessarily see him a ton in those instances playing as that one high middle of the field guy. So how equipped is he to do it? And I sort of feel like Taylor Rapp is going to be one of the starters. You heard Sean McDermott say as much that he's kind of taking control of the room and then to read the tea leaves. He came on a 1-year prove-it deal that turned into a 3-year extension. Like he's probably one of your starters, but is it him and Bishop? Is that the right mix of skill sets? Mike Edwards hasn't really practiced to this point. This is going to first opportunity to really see him at training camp. Sorting out the safeties is absolutely fascinating. And I don't know what it's going to be, but I think there's a lot riding on it.
Yes, very well said. Yeah, I don't know what it's going to be either. If I really had to put my money on it, I feel. Granted, we haven't seen Edwards. To your point, like I feel like it's Rapp and Edwards, but I could see a world where Bishop just looks so fluid and athletic and does his thing. But it is weird that no one really talked about him a whole bunch up to this point. And like, what's the reasoning for that? He's one that I definitely have my eye on. Like, as soon as they come out in team, I want to see who those safeties are. And I'm going to be watching Cole Bishop, an individual, and just kind of seeing what he looks like and how he's doing and how they're bringing him along or how he's kind of bringing himself along. Because exactly to your point, like I see it as I know this is a talking point for a lot of fans in general, kind of being like, oh, I wonder who the starting safeties are. But I think to what you spoke to and what I spoke to, I don't think people really realize the domino effect of who those starting safeties are, how it doesn't just affect the pass. It affects what you're doing against the run. It affects so much schematically because how you fit the run determines what coverages you're able to play on the back end. And then also determines like what you're able to do in terms of who you spin, when you spin them, how you disguise all those pieces, tendencies, scheme, and trends, all of that baked into it as well. It's such a large talking point, it's such a large domino effect tied into who two starters are.
Yeah.
I find it really like intriguing.
But is there more to it? Did we make it smaller than it really is? Damar Hamlin's the guy that has the most reps in the defense. That it was the hot name in minicamp. We'll see.
Yeah.
I mean, I go back to, what was the year? It was 2022.
Yes.
2 years ago, right?
Yes.
He was started like all those games, and we thought the Bills were going to win the Super Bowl, right?
Yeah.
Like, were you thinking that because Damar Hamlin was going to be the starting safety that was going to be the problem for them winning the Super Bowl? It wasn't. Nobody was talking about that, right? Not that I didn't have my issues with him, but he was a young player that was aggressive.
He flashed a bunch. He
flew around.
There were people talking about him as like, oh, there's our future starter.
Right.
He's good to go. Everything's great.
Right. And then there's also this other guy, Micah Hyde, who we've yet to get clarity that he's done, right? And I sort of just feel like the longer that door remains open, the more likely it is. So, and who's the player we're missing? Micah Hyde. Well, why not just have Micah Hyde be Micah Hyde?
Right?
So, I mean, there's a whole lot to that conversation, right? But is it just those three guys, or is there more to it?
Right.
It's fascinating.
Yeah, it's super fascinating. It's I tweeted out last week, like every day, Justin Simmons and Quandre Diggs both being available, like comes into my head like every single day. Cause I'm just like, oh, did I? Yeah. Feel like
No, dude, I'm with you on that. I really am. Because for all the concern, like in a way you talked about something that's interesting, but there's concerns baked into that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, well, you could sit here and hope that it's Mike Edwards or hope that it's Cole Bishop, but I could tell you that it would be Justin Simmons or Quandre Diggs. And you know that this has been an important piece of what this defense has been, this safety position. Yes. Like, just go get one of those two guys and be done with it and enjoy the depth and figure it out from there. And I was recently thinking about times when the Bills didn't have Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde. And there's not a lot of that, right? Because missing them both at the same time. I thought of two instances. One of them is the Minnesota game. Remember that? I mean, one of the most ridiculous football games you've ever seen in your entire life.
Still hate it.
Would have been nice to have one of those two guys in the mix. How about the other one? The early season loss to Miami, the Heat game. Yeah. The Bills beat them by 300 more yards. It was the most lopsided football game I've ever seen everywhere but what the final score was. Yeah. Well, that third and whatever it was, the Jalen Waddle play over the middle of the field where it's Jaquan Johnson and who was the other guy? Was it Hamlin or Cam Lewis?
It was Hamlin and Jaquan, and they get beat on like 3rd and 17 or whatever. Like,
right. Like those are the only two instances that I can think of that they both were not there.
They were not great. And that's what I'm always playing all these games in my head. Like I look at Mike Edwards' contract and I'm like, they could cut him right now and be fine. And even Taylor Rapp has a nice easy out next offseason. Right. But they could cut him right now, and it's still not like a crazy notion, although I really don't see that happening in any way. Yeah, and every day I thought Justin Simmons was going to be too expensive. And I thought he was going to sign a 1-year, like $13 million deal or something like that. And I already knew about him, but I watched the tape anyway. But then I watched Quandre Diggs, and I saw his age being a couple years younger, and I watched him play last year at Seattle, and I anticipated his cost. I wanted that to be the move. And what he can do coming forward, I think he's just such a good mix of range and violence, and what he would have added to the defense with his mentality, his skill set, and then still having enough range to cover in the post and just go sideline to sideline or close down against tight ends. Or he has a couple really great reps against Tennessee where he's closing down on hop and their tight end on like deep overs and drags. He sees it, he clicks, he closes, forces incompletions, almost has an interception on like a deep sit versus hop out of the slot that he's covering from a single high alignment. Yeah, and I don't mean that to be disrespectful to who they have on the roster, but every day I'm like, just sign Justin Simmons or Quandre Diggs, and then I don't have to worry about anything, and we're done.
Well, and if there is a position that Sean McDermott has absolutely earned the benefit of the doubt, it is the safety position, because of whether it's Quentin Michael out of nowhere or Mike Mitchell out of nowhere or Kurt Coleman out of nowhere or Jordan Poyer out of nowhere or Micah Hyde is a guy that Green Bay didn't even offer an extension to. The resume is off the charts, man, right? Like, it's just everywhere he's been, safeties have just kind of worked out. And so I give him huge benefit of the doubt, but it's like the one spot that I'm a little unsettled because I don't exactly know how it's going to come together.
Same. And I guess, it's fair to kind of bring it back full circle. Like, the last time I was this unsettled is when it was going to be Hyde and Poyer. And I was like, damn, they're taking this this nickel corner punt returner and making him a safety. And then they're taking this other dude who didn't really ball out for Cleveland, has been super hurt, and he's going to be the starter. And look what great pull by those names too. I have Quentin Michael written down. I just always remember man, those Philly safeties were great. And it was man, Brian Dawkins and who else? And it's Quentin Michael.
He didn't even start his first 3 years in the league. Didn't even play. Year 4, he's first year of Sean McDermott as DC. This guy's like an all-pro.
Yeah.
And then I lived in Carolina through McDermott, so I knew all about Mike Mitchell and Roman Harper and Kurt Coleman and Trey Boston. And
Trey Boston was the one I was thinking about. 33 long dreads. Who, just taking dudes, again, no disrespect, but taking dudes that were just these guys aren't great. Yeah. And they were, granted, they had studs on the defensive line and at linebacker and even corner with what Norman was through a lot of it. And then Bradbury too. But still, they were taking dudes off again, no disrespect, off the scrap heap at safety. And he was making them highly functional in both spots.
Mike Mitchell got that big deal. Didn't do a thing ever again in his career.
No, he got that huge deal.
From Pittsburgh, right?
Yes, from Pittsburgh. He went to Pittsburgh and everybody was like, oh man, Pittsburgh just added another dude. And it was nope, he's just going to get unnecessary roughness penalties and he can't really cover. McDermott, again, he knew how to set them up for success, but how to mitigate setting them up for failure. I mean, even Philly, you weren't seeing Quentin Michael living in this coverage world. He was bro, I'm going to just blitz the hell out of you. I'm having you covered down. He knows he's always had that finger on the pulse with safeties and secondary in general. So exactly your point, that's the one thing that eases my trepidation and my nerves and has me a little more excited to see instead of just being worried or fearful is that McDermott trust factor at that spot.
Mike Mitchell signed a 5-year, $25 million deal in 2014.
That's a lot for safety.
That's in 2014. That's big money. And he goes to Pittsburgh and is super mid for a bunch of seasons.
The one thing I remember from him is they were playing the Ravens in a game that mattered. And it was a 3rd and something. And he got a really horribly looking pass interference call that gave the Ravens a first down inside the Steeler 15. It was a 30-yard prayer that Flacco threw up. And Mitchell just
Joe Flacco throwing up a 30-yard prayer. Are you sure?
Right?
Was it
him?
That wasn't him, was it?
That's never happened. He's never done that. Yeah, it was ugly. And I just remember everyone booing. And he had also had a couple unnecessary roughness and personal foul penalties throughout the year. And but McDermott knows how to make them work. And that's a really interesting piece. Just that domino effect, you talked about, I talked about, it's so much more than just who your starters are. Can they replace Hyde and Poyer? What does it mean for coverage? It impacts the entirety of the defense because of what your coverage structure is tied to the front and how you fit the run. And nonetheless, it will be exciting. And this episode was exciting. Joe, I know I've kept you up very late past your bedtime.
Well, I'm bringing up Mike Mitchell and Chris Watson and face masks and field aesthetics. It's a little bit my fault. So
no, but this was a really awesome. Usually it's me that kind of gets everyone off topic, and I appreciate you bringing that energy to this episode.
I'm so buttoned up on my show. I'm I got my notes. We're going to talk about this. I got 30 minutes. I got to get it out. It's all right, AP. Let's shoot the breeze a little bit here, let our hair down that I don't have.
And
That's
that's
why I
such a
wear a hat.
nice. And that's what I was gonna say. I was gonna say, like, every time I'm on your show, like, we know, hey, this is the time we like to go for. Here's the bullet points. I know to try and keep myself like tight and succinct with what I'm saying because you're gonna speak. I want to keep everything on time.
Yeah.
And that's why I appreciate you coming here more and just riffing a little bit. We had a nice organic jersey aesthetic and field aesthetic conversation, which we will pick up next year at this time that I'm very excited for, or a little before this time. And then, I mean, your content and everything you do, as you know, like, is top tier. And we got a ton of comments in the live chat. We're just so pumped to see you here and giving you a bunch of kudos and talking about what a nice collaboration it is every time you and I get together, and how a couple people saying they want to see more of it. And that's because you're known for your quality work, but it always comes within that structure and that time.
Yeah.
So it was awesome to see you freestyle a little bit tonight. I liked it a lot. It was very good.
I enjoyed it, brother. Excited I'm sure we'll do this again soon, and excited for camp. I'm happy to know that you're going to be there the next couple of days. I'll be glued to your timeline and listening to everything that you have to say. I'm excited to get there myself next week. I'll be at 5 practices next week, so it's excited to see what's going on down there, my guy. So looking forward to your work.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I'll be there tomorrow, Thursday. I'm also looking to go Sunday. So that'll be happening as well. But yeah, it'll be a fun time. And depending on when you go, maybe we'll link up and see what happens. But just in case people don't know who you are or where they can find you and what you do, although I'm sure everybody already knows, tell them who you are, socials, episode stuff, where they can find your work. The floor is yours.
Joe Marino, host of the Locked On Bills podcast daily. That's available wherever you're listening to this podcast. Also have the Locked On NFL Scouting podcast. So if you want to hear me talk about more than just the Bills, I do that daily on Locked On NFL Scouting. Those are the 2 podcasts at the Joe Marino on X, I guess we're calling it. And excited for the season and to be part of this community that includes great folks like Anthony and Greg and Eric and AQ. I'll say AQ. We could do that. All the great guys that you have on staff at Cover One. Excited to navigate this season and, continue to serve this fan base, Bills Mafia. You guys are awesome. And you guys demand a lot. And I'm excited to be part of the group that gets to deliver.
Yeah, they do demand a lot, and you deliver every single day doing your daily show. I know it's an anchor point for so many people. Keep crushing it. I'll see you on the Twitterverse. I'm going to DM you after this. I know you'll be asleep already probably, but I'm going to DM you, singing your praises and thanking you again and everything. But again, thank you for taking the time, for joining me. This conversation was awesome. I enjoyed every aspect of it. For those still here, I'm going to keep rolling. I start a bunch of comments and thoughts from some people earlier in the episode that I'm going to get to now as we wind down a little bit. But Joe, Godspeed. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday night. I appreciate all the kind words for myself and the community and the brand and all that. And I appreciate the hell out of you, and I'll see you around.
Thanks. See ya.
Later. Tremendous episode with Mr. Joe Marino. Brought the energy, brought a lot of good stuff. Oh, I like this from Laura saying, Joe Marino is the truth. Absolutely. Oh, I didn't see the back part. You already know we love us. I appreciate you for that. Thank you very much. Yeah, Joe is awesome. Legitimately one of the best in the business. I'm always excited. Anytime I have the opportunity to do a show with Joe, and we've done a bunch now. I've been on Locked On several times. He's been on this show several times. We've collaborated a lot, and I always enjoy these episodes a lot, whether I'm on his show or he comes here. It's always a great time. Like I said, as we close this show a little bit, I'm going to read questions, thoughts, comments, concerns that I start. If you have something that I didn't get to earlier, or if you've just joined recently, feel free in the live chat. Question, thought, comment, concern, anything and everything you got, throw it up into the chat, whether it's training camp related, Bills in general related, football related, anything and everything, put it up into the chat. I'll answer it now on the back segment of this episode. Again, I have some things started, but I'd love for more things to come through and kind of crush some stuff as we go through. As you folks potentially think of that, I'm going to throw up the banner for the sponsor of the show that I mentioned in the beginning, One Pie Pizza. I say it all the time, the best pizza in Buffalo, New York for me. And it's not just, I don't say that because they're the sponsor. They're the sponsor because I thought their pizza was the best. I was looking for a sponsor. I actually reached out to a different pizza spot. Didn't know One Pie existed. They answered, had me come in for a tasting. I thought the food was so dope. And now to watch them expand with what they're doing with pizzas and breakfast stuff, and they do some catering things. And I had them cater a party that I threw earlier this summer, and they do like mac and cheeses, like this barbecue pork mac and cheese and buffalo mac and cheese. It just they do so many good things there at One Pine, and they're also really good people. I mention all the time how they give back to the community and all their different initiatives throughout the entirety of the year. I always say they're really good people making really good food. So go get yourself some One Pie Pizza. Online menu again can be found in the episode show notes, whether here on YouTube or whichever podcasting app or platform you are listening to this show on. Okay, let me go back into the comments. Some of the things that I had start. Oh, it was funny from Mike earlier in the episode. Do you think Rapp and Edwards will start over Bishop until he learns the ropes? Right now, if I had to put money on it, yeah, I think the starters will be Taylor Rapp and Mike Edwards. Which again, like Joe and I talked about, comes with its own set of, I don't want to say concerns, but concerns and possibilities at the very least. I do think it'll be Edwards and Rapp, even though, again, Edwards' contract is very cut friendly, and even Rapp's contract is cut friendly as well. Like I mentioned, even though he's on a 3-year deal. But I do think it'll be Rapp and Edwards to start the year. And I'm interested to see what that means for Cole Bishop. How does he get worked in? Another thing that I've mentioned a little bit this offseason, a position I love is slot corner in today's NFL. I think it's a premium position. I think Taron Johnson is one of the best at it. Obviously, he was an all-pro last year. He's right up there with Kenny Moore, Mike Hilton, and Trent McDuffie as the best slot corners in football, the best apex players positionally with what he does against the run and the pass. I want, if Cole Bishop doesn't start and it's Edwards and Rapp, I also like the idea of Cole Bishop being the backup nickel to Taron Johnson because of his ability to function in and around the box and the hook curls and the flats, but his ability to also fit the run and just what he can do. I like him as a backup nickel to Taron Johnson, which is something I haven't felt confident in the backup to Taron Johnson for years. Cam Lewis is fine in terms of his versatility, and he gives you, again, some ability to play safety while also playing apex, but I've never felt holistically comfortable with who's behind Taron Johnson. And again, it's hard to feel that comfortable about somebody backing up an all-pro or backup guys in general. But I like the idea of Cole Bishop also being like a Taron Johnson supporter or buttress in addition to being that safety squad. Question here for Rick saying, if Edwards plays guard, who takes the heavy tight end role? Really good question. David Edwards was tremendous as that sixth offensive lineman in those sets last year. I wonder who it is. If I had to put money on it right now, I think it'd be either Ryan Vandermark or it would be Lyle Collins. But that's an aspect that is a sneaky thing to watch for because they went to that sixth offensive lineman, those sets pretty regularly. And they had tremendous success with them. So that's a very good question. I like both of those. Well done. Well done. What else do we got? Steven saying, what position is the least deep as we start camp? Sneaky answer for me. I'm going to say corner, outside corner in particular. I love Douglas and I love Benford. I want to love Kyer Elam, and I know he's had moments of really great play and really good productivity. I still just think he's such an unknown quantity at this point with his footwork, with his hands, how grabby he is, and how panicky he gets at the top of routes. Eric and I had him on in the film room. Dude is tremendously smart. He's got great athleticism, size, frame, all that. He ticks so many boxes. He just hasn't been able to put it all together with regularity. But again, has made some tremendously clutch plays and awesome plays early in his career, even though that's also gone along with some struggles. I'm going to say corner just because I don't have faith in Kyer as a starter right now. And then Jamarcus Ingram is the outside CB4. And I don't have a ton of faith in that as well. I also think some of the offensive line as a whole could be talked about. Like last year at this time, we had the starting five, and then it was Ryan Bates and David Edwards as your 6 and your 7. Actually, at this point last year, we didn't even know if Torrance was going to start. So it might have been Torrance and Edwards. Like there was good depth along the offensive line from a high functionality standpoint. I don't think you necessarily have that this year where you have confidence in your 6th and 7th offensive lineman. Fair. Oh, Ralph said it's CB. Is pretty shallow for me. And then Steven followed up. It's funny watching these comments and then saying I didn't see these before I gave my answer, so I didn't cheat or anything. Steven saying I would agree, but hoping Elam can get some confidence. Yeah, confidence is a huge piece for corners. I'm hoping the change in coaching staff, maybe Adai is able to tap into something that Butler wasn't able to, kind of get him situated right. Because again, there's so much to tap into because of how he sees the game, how he understands it, and then the size and frame and length and athleticism and all that kind of stuff. I would love for him to be a solid answer. Also, too, just from a longevity standpoint, he's going into year 3. Rasul Douglas is on the books next year with void years, but he's not signed to the Bills next year. So I would love if some point, I don't want Benford or Douglas to go down at any point this year, but corners get banged up all the time. NFL players get banged up in general, but corners get banged up all the time. There's a very realistic chance that Kaiir Elam sees some meaningful reps this year. I would love to go into next season knowing that Kaiir Elam is capable of being a starter for this team, but we'll see what happens. Good comment here. I'm excited to see what Knox returning to form can bring to the offense. A wrist injury for an inline tight end is no joke. Absolutely. You're trying to block and fit up, not just catching the ball, but that wrist is getting a lot of action as you're trying to block edges and linebackers and apexes and safeties and all that kind of stuff. So it's not great. Oh, this is really cool. Charles says, without Google, name the QBs the Bills faced last season. Oh, if I had the schedule in front of me, I could do it easy. But, okay, Aaron Rodgers and Zach Wilson in week 1. Week 2 was the Commanders. So week 2 was Vegas. So that was Jimmy G. Week 3 was the Commanders. So that's Sam Howell. Week 4 was the Dolphins. So that was Tua. I don't remember. Week 5 was Jacksonville, so Trevor Lawrence. I'm going to cheat and bring up the Bills' schedule from 2023. I'm not going to look up who they played or who the starters were. Obviously. Okay, so yeah, New York, Vegas, Washington, Miami, Jacksonville. Oh, New York was week 6. So New York was week 6. That was Tyrod Taylor. Week 7 was the Pats. That was Mac Jones. 8 was Tampa. So that's Baker Mayfield. 9 was Cincy. That's Burrow. Denver was week 10. Russell Wilson. 11 was New York. That was Zach Wilson again. 12 was Philly. So that was Hurts. Kansas City, Mahomes. Dallas, Prescott. The Chargers. Oh, Easton Stick. Easton Stick. I think Easton Stick. I think it's his first name. I know it was Stick. I think Easton Stick in week 16 against the Chargers. Week 17 was the Patriots. That was Bailey Zappi, if I remember correctly. Week 18 was Miami, so that was Tua. Playoffs was Pittsburgh. That was Mason Rudolph, and then the divisional round was Kansas City. So Patrick Mahomes. This is a really good question. I like this. I know I went to their schedule last year so I could look at team by team. I knew I could answer it easily that way. I just couldn't remember the order of everyone. I like that. Joe saying, Ant, what do you think the Bills would do if they were early? Oh, Charles says I was spot on. Thank you very much. I might be wrong. I think Easton Stick's first name is Easton. I could be wrong. I know the last name is Stick, and he was number 2. I'm pretty sure his first name is Easton. Joe says, Ant, what do you think the Bills would do if there are early and obvious signs that Elam isn't developing any further? Maybe they try to grab a veteran corner. I think Akello Witherspoon is still a free agent, unrestricted. He was somebody who I mentioned like a month or so ago, and I still think he's an unrestricted free agent. I've been watching some more Rams tape, accidentally and on purpose over the last month or so as well, and he keeps popping in different ways. I would love to see them take a shot at someone like Akello Witherspoon from the Rams previously with Pittsburgh the year before that. I would love for them to take a shot. But if there's signs that Elam isn't developing any further, it comes down into 2 points, right? If he's not developing, but he's fine being a CB3 and maybe a spot starter, then you're probably just letting it rock. Maybe you try to address it and bring in somebody else to be CB3 just to kind of give yourself some reinforcement for a playoff run or to finish the season out. If he's not developing any further and they don't feel confident in him playing and Benford or Douglas goes down, then I think you look towards the free agency route. Similar to kind of what they did, 2 years ago when they brought in like Xavier Rhodes and he saw some meaningful reps for them. So I think you address it. And again, it depends on if there's early and obvious signs that he's not developing any further. If that means he's still at the level he's been at the past couple of years, I don't think, for me, I'm not comfortable starting him. I'm comfortable if it's like, if somebody got banged up in the second quarter and he has to finish that game, or if he has to spot start for 1 or 2 games, maybe. But if he's got to be a regular starter, I think you need to go and address that position because I'm not in that spot. Andrew Pagano. What's up, Andrew? Andrew says, what do we do if Vaughn doesn't return to form, hope that the depth is able to mitigate that. If Vaughn doesn't return to form, you hope that AJ Epinesa takes a jump in his game overall. You hope that Groot takes a jump in his game as a pass rusher. You hope that Dwan Smoot is pre-Achilles injury Dwan Smoot. And then you hope that Javon Solomon can give you meaningful reps this year, or some other person at edge. But basically, if Vaughn doesn't return to form, you are hoping a lot of other guys are able to mitigate that lack of return to form by taking jumps themselves, or not necessarily playing out of their mind, but just playing at a level that kind of mitigates that impact. And it could just take one person. If AJ Epinesa takes the jump that he needs to truly be an edge 2, then Vaughn not returning to form isn't that big of a deal. But even with that, you would still need somebody to be like, is Vaughn good enough to be edge 3? Even if he's not returning to form, is he good enough to be edge 4? So basically you would need several players to kind of step up and mitigate that, but it's possible. Paul says, didn't Ryan Vandermark play tight end? He may have. I think, didn't he play tight end at like UConn? I'm looking it up right now. No, that's not how you spell that. Vandermark. Ryan Vandermark, tackle at UConn. Let's see his snaps by position. O-line only in 2021. O-line only in maybe a couple random tight end reps based on what I'm seeing. Yeah, he's had some tight end reps, is basically what PFF is showing me here. If I'm reading slot and inline correctly. So yeah, I think that's a possibility that happened at some point. Maybe he did it in the NFL too. That's a fair question. Oh, I like going through all these things and seeing everybody who's answering the questions. Oh, Sean says, yeah, there is a report saying the Bills faced the worst QBs ever last season. That's a possibility. I mean, you got Zach Wilson twice, you got Mac Jones, you got Bailey Zappi, you got Easton Stick. But I mean, they've also faced, especially if taking the playoffs into account, like they got Mahomes twice, they faced Dak, they faced Hurts, they faced Trevor Lawrence. I know a lot of people like to dunk on Trevor Lawrence. I think Trevor Lawrence is really good. But then they also played Tyrod. Jimmy G's not great. Sam Howell's not great. I can understand that conversation, either from an actual stats and metric standpoint or just overall like discussion. I could see that. Oh, people saying, yep, it is Easton Stick. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, I like what Laura says here. Yeah, Elam is who I'm watching at camp, and obviously our wide receivers. Man, I don't know where my eyes are going to go tomorrow. I have a list of things that I'm really trying to watch tomorrow and Thursday. Again, I think I'm going on Sunday as well. I just need tickets for Sunday. So I'm probably going to put a tweet out and hope somebody has a random extra ticket or a couple of tickets and go see what's going on with that. But yeah, Elam is somebody I'm going to be watching. Just corner is always a spot that gets banged up. It's a premium position, so it's already important, but it's always a spot where dudes get banged up and nicked up. And even going down to CB4, like I like Jamarcus Ingram. I like him more in the slot than I do out wide. And he's the CB4, and then Elam's the 3. It's just, I don't feel great. Oh, Paul says, literally as I got a no from ChatGPT. Okay, so he never played tight end. All right, cool. There's a couple reps that's listed for him on PFF in college at UConn that he was listed as like slot and inline. So it could just be where he aligned. Like he wasn't actually a tight end, but they just kind of used his athleticism and size and aligned him in certain spots. So he may have played it by alignment, but I don't think he wasn't ever officially a tight end. Oh, that's funny. Paul says, as the text was printing, I heard your voice reading my name. I like that. I should have just looked it up on ChatGPT. Well done. Well done. Zach of all trades says, I know we already talked Elam, but hear me out. Spencer Brown was so mercurial. He put it together in 2023 and was banged up in 2022. Do we think Elam has the same trajectory? I could see that. I'm not counting out Kyrie Elam on any way, shape, or form. The general rule of thumb that I operate by, and this is a rule of thumb, I think, for scouts and front office people and just things in general, you don't really give a concrete decision or grade on someone until they finish their third year. So I think the jury is still out for Kyrie. Even if Kyrie balled out the first 2 seasons, I would still be like, well, let's see what happens in year 3. And then given where he's at right now, I'm still very much in a wait and see mode. I haven't given up on him. Again, just the tools that he has and the traits that he has and the mind and football IQ that he operates with. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that he puts it all together. I would love for him to be able to put things together ASAP. I do think it's a possibility that he could kind of hit on things. What's nice with Brown is that he had Aaron Cromer working with him. I will say this for Spencer Brown. He had obviously a good 2023 for what he did this past season and stabilizing his game a bit. I don't think his 2023 was as good as a lot of people may necessarily think it is. I did a project where I basically watched every single rep of his in pass protection, and he got beat a little bit more than people remember, and he got help a lot, either from the tight ends lining up alongside him or giving him chip help, or the running backs giving him some chip help, or Osiris Torrance being kind of an inside lead piece and helper as he needed. But I do think Brown had a good year, especially compared to what he was. But I still am tempering expectations a little bit for him. But I think Elam could have the same trajectory. And I think that's a very fair point. He's got the traits. He's got the pedigree. He's really smart. If you haven't watched the film room episode that he was on with Eric and I, dude understands like, oh, hey, I was able to jump this route and make this interception because I saw the quarterback when he went to throw his shoulder angle and trajectory was dipped a little bit. So I knew he wasn't going to the intermediate route. I knew he was pushing it downfield, which is why I took off and jumped this. And like, he gets it. Basically what his biggest problem is his footwork gets a little sloppy, and that causes him to grab and get grabby either in stems or on the breaks for routes. And that's been his biggest thing. So if his footwork is better, that's a huge, huge piece. And it's possible that it could. I know a lot of the conversation with him is always like, well, he's a man corner and he's not good at playing zone. But the issue was, granted, that's part of it. But the issue for me was even when he was playing man, he's still mad grabby. Like in man, or even if he's matching, like he's grabby, regardless whether. And then if he's in zone, if he's sitting, on an out route and it's cover two and he's a cloud corner, he gets grabby on the corner or on the receiver as they make that break. So I think a lot of it is his footwork and tying that in with his eyes and his hands. And if he can get in that spot, then cool. But yeah, I'm not counting him out any way, shape, or form. What else? Claude says, what's worse is the Bills lost to a lot of bad QBs. Yeah. Zach Wilson, Mac Jones, Russell Wilson. Yeah. Yeah, the Mac Jones, I mean, all three of those are killer. The Mac Jones one really kills me. Like the Zach Wilson one, Allen played terrible in that game and turned the ball over like 75 times. The Mac Jones one kills me because the Bills offense took the lead late after not playing great, and then the defense let Mac Jones just drive right down, even though it was like, oh, what was it, that screen pass or something to Ramondre Stevenson out of the backfield, and it should have been like a legal man downfield. I forget what call they got hosed on, but still, you let Mac Jones like drive down and win that game. That was terrible. And then, yeah, that Broncos game, field goals at the end, and just that Broncos game too was the first play is that pass to Cook, and it gains like 8 yards, and he fumbles, and it was just turnovers and horrible timing. Yeah, man, it was. Oh, what's this comment here from this guy saying, all you guys should come on and be Dolphins fans. Oh, good. I see people coming back at Gary. Well, good one for Gary. Charles says, will Brady run Josh into the ground, or will they actually give short yardage goal work to the running backs with the addition of Davis? Good question. I think Brady is going to lean into the Josh Allen run game. I'm not going to say run him into the ground. And I'll also say this too, and I've said it on the show. I think Dorsey was keeping the Josh Allen run game like in the holster for his like break glass in case of emergency piece, and something he was going to bust out later in the season. He just never got to that point. I expect Brady to lean more into the Josh Allen run game. I'm not going to say necessarily run him into the ground, but I mean, part of him being a mutant and alien and unicorn is that he is like a goal line back and a short yardage winner. But I do think you'll see Ray Davis worked into that role, and even Ty Johnson to a degree as well. I also think you'll see a good mix of play action and boots for short yardage and goal line work to take advantage of Allen's legs, not necessarily as a direct runner, but to get him on the move in space and create explosives or big plays off of that, based off of playing the tendencies. Paul says, if what you said about the alignment is true, ChatGPT is wrong, and the laurels you tossed me should be calling me. Hey man, I'm not gonna call AI stupid. I could be wrong. I would have to go back and watch his tape. It could just be how PFF charted it. And again, that's a human charting it. It could be human error. I don't know. They could be wrong. Oh, Pop says, I think I have one extra ticket for Sunday. That would be tremendous if you had an extra ticket. I think Eric is trying to go too. So I'm trying to scrap together 2 tickets, one for myself, one for Eric. That would be huge. Pops, I greatly appreciate you for that. What else? Oh, Gary's coming in saying, what happened in the 70s? Dolphins fan talking smack. Fun. Claude says his father and uncle are both safeties. Is it possible that Elam's home may be safety? No, I think he's made for corner. I also don't think he has the tackling for safety. His fits from depth and then finishing at the tackle point, I do not think are consistent enough. I think it's a harder transition to go from corner to safety than people make it seem. Not that you're making it seem easy, but how you see the field, your responsibility in relation to coverages and the route distributions, and then coming forward and fitting the run, it's a really different world. And just based off of his tackling alone, I wouldn't want to put him in that position, let alone having him try to adjust and learn a new position. I think it would be a lot. Charles says Tyrod almost got us too. Yep. Tyrod almost beat us. I mean, technically, they could have called pass interference on that last play of the game, and it could have given the Giants another shot. That game was wild. Adam saying they don't use Josh enough, or they don't use enough Josh in bootleg runs. They definitely could. Joe says, let's say you were stuck on an island, but you found, I hope this is good. I'm like reading through it. I don't know. Let's say you were stuck on an island, but you found out that you could choose 3 Bills players to magically appear and help you build a ship to escape. Who do you choose and why? Bruce Smith, because he's a monster of a man. And you're gonna need dudes who have intelligence and then who have like physical ability to carry stuff and build stuff and put things together. So I'm gonna bring Bruce Smith because I think he could be a workhorse for helping me like build a ship in terms of ripping stuff down, chopping things up. I think he would be great for that. This is really good. This is super tough, man. I kind of want to say Tremaine Edmonds because like his length would be super helpful to like pull stuff down. Oh, this is a good one from Mike. Mike said Trent Edwards. I'm trying to think of like who would be super smart. Like, I don't know. Bernard is super smart. Like, because I'm also thinking like, does anyone who's going to know how to build a ship? So I'm thinking like Micah Hyde is super smart. Terrell Bernard is super smart. Honestly, Bruce was super smart as well. But I need somebody to like maybe. Oh man, I think like Hyde. I feel like Hyde would just have good leadership. I'm going to say Micah Hyde from a leadership standpoint and just kind of keeping us on track, keeping us level headed. Yeah, I'm going to say Micah Hyde. I'm going to say Bruce Smith and 3 Bills. I also do coaches count because then I'm trying to think like, oh man, like I want to be like Rex Ryan for entertainment. This is really tough. Oh, tries to go from Charles. He said, I'd bring 2 offensive linemen and McKenzie strictly to keep the vibes. Oh, I probably, that's a good offensive lineman. I'm going to say Spencer Brown. Currently, just from a size and athleticism standpoint. I think he just take advantage of everything that he brings. He's got size, he's got length, he's got height, he's got strength. Also, too, we're on an island, so I'm going to need somebody to help me like fight dudes off or fight off animals or fight off when we're on the boat. What happens if we got to fight a shark? So I want dudes who can scrap. So having an offensive lineman in Spencer Brown with size and athleticism, having Bruce Smith and then Micah Hyde, that would be my grouping. This is a really tough one. I like this. This was good. Yeah, Joe, you should take responsibility for the derailment. Yeah, sorry, David. Paul says, got a dip. Thanks for the great show. Y'all go Bills. Yeah, Mike says, you want high character guys. Oh, Roy said Ryan Fitzpatrick for a smart guy. Oh, yeah. Yeah. That's in there too. This is a really hard question. Joe, we're going to have to go back and make this like a pure off-season episode crossover of under review / disguise coverage because that's a really good one. That's a really good one. Oh, that's good from David. He says, Fitz, we can use his beard as a raft. That's good. Oh, I like that. I like that. Oh, also, are we like, if we're in terms of magically appearing, I'm assuming we're talking about them in their prime. Like, I assume that. Like, if I pick Bruce Smith right now, like I want like prime, like 28-year-old, like Bruce Smith. Yeah, this is a tough one. Yeah, that's good. And part of me also thinks like, ooh, like Bryce Paup or like Shane Conlon. Mm. That was another joke I was going to make, but I'm not going to. That's a really good question. That's a really good question. And I think it's a good spot to put up the banner. It says Toodle, folks, and start to wind down. Joe says different survival scenarios. I almost chose a cave instead of an island. I love that. Bookmark that idea. Off-season content or even in-season during the bye week or something this year. Do it. Set it up on the show. I will join you on Under Review, and let's make this an episode. This is mad funny. I like this a lot. Different survival scenarios. And then different qualifications and different pieces, different survival scenarios in terms of location, but also like challenges you have to overcome, certain obstacles. I love that. That's great. That's great. That's great. I'm gonna throw up the banner. It says Toodles, folks. We're gonna start to wind down here and say goodbye. If you have not already, please, 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 and thank you. Drop a like on this video. Likes are the lifeblood of these streams here on YouTube. So if you have not already, please drop a like on this video. I say it every week. It goes a sincerely long way towards helping myself and the entire brand to track and trend in front of more eyes and ears. So if you haven't already, please drop a like on this video. It would be greatly appreciated. If you're listening on one of the podcasting apps or platforms, that's cool too. Please rate and review and subscribe to Disguised Coverage on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, wherever you listen to your podcast. Please, please, please. And thank you. Tell your family and friends and loved ones about how awesome this show is. If you thought the show was terrible, tell your enemies and try and make them watch it to ruin their day. Major thank you to everyone who tuned in live for this episode. I know it's the training camp eve, so there's a little more excitement here, but thank you to everyone who tuned in live. Greatly appreciate it. If you didn't watch live and you watched later, that's cool too. Again, thank you for your post-live view, listen, download, whatever have you. Again, rate, review, subscribe, all that stuff. Major thank you to Joe Marino for joining me in this episode. I had a blast going through what we planned on talking about, but then also all the offshoot conversations we had right off the jump with Joe. This was a great episode. I really enjoyed it. And it's a fun time. It's training camp eve. Bills training camp 2024 starts tomorrow. And then kind of just go from there in terms of, I think the season really starts once training camp starts. And before we know it, the preseason will be here and the regular season will be here. It's a really, really good time. I'm very excited. RJ says, fun episode. I'm glad you enjoyed it, RJ. This is a good comment from J-Dub, who says, for boat building, you need the tallest guy you can get and the smallest guy you can get. I don't know anything about boat building, so you could be right, or you could be making this up, and I have no idea. But that seems like it kind of makes sense. But I like that. We're just going to have a whole boat building episode here and an offshoot to follow up, and then we'll take a poll of who we should pick. I like this a lot. Again, thank you to Joe Marino. Thank you to everybody who tuned in live. Thank you to everybody who watched post-live, listened post-live, whatever have you, whatever form or fashion your support comes in is greatly appreciated. Again, rate, review, subscribe, drop some likes here on YouTube. Tell your family, friends, and loved ones about the show and the brand in general. Go check out Joe Marino on Locked On Bills if you have not already. Also checked out his stuff on Locked On Scouting. He's just a great follow in general and dude who makes a lot of quality stuff with whatever he attaches his name to. If you are at Bills training camp tomorrow, feel free to tweet at me. Maybe we can meet up, say what's up. Feel free to tweet at me, DM me, whatever you got. I'm excited for camp tomorrow. I'll be there again tomorrow and Thursday, and I'm looking to go Sunday. I hope you folks are doing well. I hope you and your family and friends and loved ones are all doing well and staying safe. Be kind to one another. Take care of one another. I will see you next Tuesday, 9 p.m. Eastern, for another episode of Disguised Coverage. I'll also see you tomorrow, 5 Eastern, potentially for another episode of the Cover One Film Room with myself and Eric. So I'll either see you in the film room or I'll see you next week here on Disguised Coverage. I appreciate all the kind words that are coming through the chat for myself. Or again, like I mentioned earlier, appreciate all the kind words for Joe and the suggestions or the positive comments and thoughts about Joe and I collabing and every time we get together and how good it is. I like the comment from Adam Ritter earlier saying that we need to do a show together, like a regular show. Appreciate all that. Appreciate you folks. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday night. Godspeed. And as always,